Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it off, got it! And Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. How is it going? Welcome aboard on this Tuesday. Appreciate you being in with us, as always. Looking forward to another fun show today with our good friend Mike DeCourcy, Chronic Hoosier, were joining us, and Mike Nizilik from the Bloomington Herald-Times. Always plenty to talk about, and welcome your questions and comments on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. If you're on YouTube, you can send those along. And welcome aboard. Shout out to all of our peeps listening on our radio affiliates down in Evansville, 97.7 ESPN The Ref, always the right call. Up in the region, the voice of the region, WJOB, 1230 AM, 104.7 FM, over in Fort Wayne on Fort Wayne's only sports station, 1380 The Fan. And while I'm thinking about it, shout out to Tom and Jules from Fort Wayne. Met them while I was been on my trip. They're from Fort Wayne, ironically, and they're very, very cool. So that was our housemate, John, when I first moved in, when we were down here, rather.
That's pretty neat. Shout out to our friends in Fort Wayne.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of which, I notice, and for those of you that are in Fort Wayne listening, make sure you tune in the morning with Caleb and Kenny, because they're giving away, I think, 4 sets of tickets to, I think it's the Wright State game. I'm going to have to double check that, but
I'll check that for you right now.
They've got a bunch of tickets all week, so stay tuned into those guys.
You're giving away a 4-pack of tickets to Saturday's Indiana-Michigan State game, is what they're doing.
Perfect, to the football game. So there you go. Last year is where Indiana showed some poise, at least, up in East Lansing, as they went up there and still shocked me by getting that win. Dexter Williams, of course, that's when he became a thing until he wasn't in the next game, where he was hurt against Purdue, ironically, and still Purdue is the game up following. How does Indiana football respond? How do they perform these last 2 games when there's so much going on, which I know there may not – I'm not sure if the coaching stuff is sunk down to those guys, but we'll talk more about that. IU basketball is in an odd place. We'll talk about that. IU women's basketball coming off of that shocking blowout, not a loss, but a blowout. Makes you wonder. But early season, they were on the road. Sometimes things just go awry, and for things like that, I will always remember, just talk to Todd Leary. He'll tell you. I remember he was on the team that I think got beat by like 100 by Wisconsin. It was just ugly. And from what I recall from Todd, I think Knight just almost ignored the game and said, we just got to forget that one. But let's see. The soccer tournament, I think, starts Thursday in Bloomington, as Indiana will take on, I'm doing this by memory, Lipscomb. So if you're up there, I'm looking forward to being out there and covering that. The college football playoffs. This is going to be so interesting. I mean, it's going to semi-solve itself, but I guarantee you at the end, there's going to be, what's the term, John? The gnashing of teeth.
The wailing and gnashing of teeth.
The wailing and gnashing of teeth. I couldn't think of the first part of that. There's going to be some wailing and gnashing of teeth as somebody is going to miss that probably deserves to go in. And I'll tell you who the most vulnerable one-loss team would be is Washington if they get a loss. And they would, but this is where it kind of sucks to me. You can go, all right, so if you already have a loss and you go through the season, you'll be fine. You'll be better off than Washington, then who could go undefeated through a gauntlet of the most difficult football conference this season at 12-0 record, and then meet up with Oregon, who's number 6. And if they lose that game, they out, baby. They got no chance to make the playoffs. And that's another thing that aggravates me. I've been reading up the Heisman. Who's the Heisman? There's some people have it different, but most people have like a top 3. But then one I saw that Marvin Harrison was actually above Michael Penix. I'm like, okay. And I'm going to talk to Mike DeCourcy about that because I know he is a gigantic proponent of Marvin Harrison being the best player in college football. And I'm like, I don't think that you can put that tag on him. He may be the greatest wide receiver in college football, but I don't think you can make him the greatest player. Boy, you never plan on that. Because he can impact the game one way, catching a ball that somebody else has to throw to him. Michael Penix or any other quarterback, Bo Nix, even Caleb Williams, who is on a USC team that has not been what most expected, Shedeur Sanders. Those guys have to do so much more. They have to get the ball to these guys. It's not a quarterback's award. I get that. But other than someone like Travis Hunter, who for Colorado, now that's a dude that had he not gotten hurt, he probably still might not have gotten the pub, but that's a guy that went both ways. And not just playing, I mean doing damage both ways. And he's equally as good on both sides of the ball for Colorado as a DB and wide receiver. We've seen guys go both ways before. That happened last year or year before last at Iowa State, that one was pretty wild. I can't remember that guy's name, but he didn't just go both ways. He played linebacker and then was the dang quarterback. That was something. So hello to everybody on our Andy Moore Honda hotline. We appreciate you joining us, coming to you, of course, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios South. Fred, how are you? He was at it. Court Kent from Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Las Vegas, Larry. Pete's back. Forrest, glad he's got off for the summer. Doesn't have the kid, no teaching. Bob down in G-Town. Yeah, G-Town. Does anybody still call it G-Town? That's what I used to call it when we were growing up. Philip says number 4 Marquette at number 23 Illinois tonight. Also the Champions Classic tonight. That's right. Kansas and Kentucky. So you want to look at Kansas and an upcoming Indiana opponent? Well, you can watch them play Kentucky tonight. And then is it Duke and Michigan State in the other one? I believe. John Boy?
That is correct. The first one is Duke, Michigan State. They'll play.
I was going to say, yeah,
and then,
I thought
Kansas, Kentucky's afterwards.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That the Kansas UK was the marquee game. So listen to these games that are this week. I just mentioned Kansas UK, Duke, Michigan State. This Sunday, Indiana, UConn, and I'm sure there are a few others that I don't have the full slate of all those games that are going on, but it's going to be a wild week early. And that's the thing, man. Some teams, like everyone always talks about Michigan State, but to a point, sometimes that gets to be an excuse. But look at what they did last year. They turned a so-so team into an Elite Eight team at Michigan State, I'm talking about. So, and kind of referring to Indiana basketball's early season woes, but those are a little more problematic. And we'll talk about that, of course, more with Mike DeCourcy when he joins us. But I guarantee you, he's going to be with us 2 segments. One segment I'm going to make just about the college football playoffs, and we're going to have a Marvin Harrison versus any of the other top 3. Jaden Daniels is kind of becoming, he's going to be hard to beat. He just became the first player in FBS history to throw for, I don't know if it was just 300 or 350 yards in a game and rush for 200 yards in a game. That's like Lamar Jackson-esque. That reminds you of the things that he used to do. But he's doing them at LSU. And you know what the knock on him is, John?
What would that be?
LSU's lost 3 games.
Yeah, the Heisman is such a weird award.
What
the way
in
that
the
they
hell?
base things off of.
First of all, when I hear that, I want to explode. Anthony Thompson did not win the Heisman because he was on a team that had a losing record. Indiana lost their final game against Purdue off of a chip shot field goal that was missed, and he lost one of the closest races ever with Andre Ware of Houston. And it's that's still to this day pisses me off from the standpoint of, what does it matter what the freaking field goal kicker does? What does any player that is a Heisman caliber player have to do what a field goal kicker does? What does any of those players have to do with what the defense does? Jaden Daniels is killing it. The games that they've lost, well, let me see. They lost to Ole Miss because they gave up 2,000 points. He's not playing defense, but he kept them in the game because they scored. I forget the score of that game. It was a high-scoring affair, but my point being, he's not playing both sides. What the hell? The Heisman Trophy was intended for the best college football player. That's why, but it has become a popularity contest, and what name is on your jersey. And I'll use another Indiana running back as a second example, and that was, now I've drawn a blank.
Tevin Coleman.
Tevin Coleman. Thank you very much. Over 2,000 yards rushing and yada, yada. Didn't matter. Hey, we're late for a break, it looks like. So we'll get to you. We've got a great lineup as always. The incomparable Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and BTN Network joins us next. Back with more, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jim. Where are you?
I am in mid-South Florida. I came down for a wedding. Cape Coral, Fort Myers area.
Oh, okay.
Luckily, I need to cut this thing out and take it with me when I go home, this screen, because I feel like I'm on game day right now. I've got a 10-inch screen behind me that allows you to see what's going on back behind me. But where are you, sir?
I am in beautiful West Lafayette, Indiana.
Oh,
yeah, that's right. You were at Mackey last night.
I was at Mackey, and then tonight I will be at the United Center. Looking forward to Duke, Michigan State, Kentucky, Kansas.
Oh, that's at the United Center. Well, man, you just rolled it right up into a big Powerball play, didn't you?
Yeah, it was really cool being there last night. Jimmy Jackson, I got a chance to catch up. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. He was calling a game for Fox, and I ran into a friend who works for the Spurs now. He used to be a recruiting analyst. He's a VP for the Spurs and personnel, Dave Tellup. We've been friends for 25 years, maybe a little longer.
Tellup. Did he used to coach?
No, Dave started. He was with ESPN. He was a recruiting analyst for them. He was with Scout.
That's why I know his name. Okay.
Yeah. He's been with the Spurs now for 11 years, and don't remember his exact title, like VP of Player Personnel or something like that. But he's a great guy, and I don't get to see him as much now that he's in the NBA circles as I did back in the day. But one of the best people. So it was, and there's nobody I enjoy, listening to talk about hoops more than Matt Painter. And so I sit there in his press conference, and I just, there's nothing better for someone who loves the game than
his press conferences are. He reminds me of Jeff Mercer. Oh, before we'll talk about Purdue Xavier, of course, tonight's games, and then in the next segment, I want to talk about the college football playoffs, the Heisman and Harbaugh.
You got it.
All right, here we go, guys. Go ahead. You have a couple seconds, Jim, if you need to get something else out.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Sorry. All right, here we go.
Be a student to play at Eagle Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. Thank you so much for being with us as always. Joined now by our great friend Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News and BTN Network. Make sure you give him a follow and go to the Sporting News for all of his content and much more. It is plenty, and one of the last remaining bastions of sports, what you would call the bedrock sports outlets. SI is no longer SI. Did the Sporting News used to also put out a magazine, right?
Oh, for 100 and so we've been digital only now for, let's see, 11 years. So we put out a magazine for 127 years.
I mean, I don't want to get off onto this tangent because I already know the answer, but how sad is it that, because I talk about it all the time, I would love to be sitting here with a newspaper in my hand and I had my ritual. I would get for me growing up, it was the Courier Journal in Louisville. But we'd get the Indiana edition because I lived in Indiana. So it was great there. and I would divide it. I'd just open it up, take the sports section out first, and then you got the Indiana section, and then I'd get back to the front page. But it would take me a hot minute to get through the sports section because it just start reading all the stuff that it's important. And then when you're done with that, you go back and you find, all right, what did I miss here? Flip that thing over and pop it and fold it. And I know that sounds like a get off my lawn kind of a thing, but I lament that it stinks. And then even Sports Illustrated, the magazine, I mean, being on a Sports Illustrated cover was it was magic. And those covers are going to be historic. I mean, you go into the men's room at Yogi's in Bloomington, and that's part of what the wallpaper is. Right. So I just miss all that. But we have to live on in the new world or get left, or we'd still be driving Model Ts, I guess.
Yeah, everything changes. What's important to me, it's funny because 10, 15 years ago, there would be people in the newspaper business who would lament that so-and-so was leaving such and such newspaper to go to work for, say, sportingnews.com. And it's like, hey, we're still in the business. We're still writing about sports. That's what it's about. Were there things about newspapers that I loved? Absolutely. But there are also things about being able to pick up my phone and figure out that, how many points and rebounds Zach Edey had last night in 3 seconds that I love. So, I think back to when I started in the business, and Jim, if I called somebody, I had to sit at my desk and I couldn't go to lunch. I'm waiting for, I don't know. I remember there was a racer when I was covering auto racing. Bill Elliott, I think his name was. He was hottest guy on NASCAR. And I left just to go to the bathroom, and I missed his call. That's not ever going to happen now. If he's calling me back, and it's, a little bit harder to get those callbacks now maybe than it used to be. But if he's calling me back, it's going to ring in my pocket, and I won't miss him. So there are things about today that...
Or he'll just send you a text message.
Yeah, I mean, it's just different. And so there are things about yesterday that were really cool, but there are things about today that are really cool. So you just try to embrace what you have. And the important thing for me is there are a lot of people still employed in sports media, maybe even more than there were back then. Because you still have people working for newspapers, and then you have people working for internet sites. So there may be more in sports media. It seems to me that there are now. You add in sports radio, which when I was younger, when I was a kid, and when I was in my early career, there were no all sports radio stations. WFAN didn't start till like 86 or 88, somewhere around there. Maybe it was 86. That was the first one. And now there's one in like every small town in America has one. So there are so many people working in our business, and I just choose to embrace the wonder of that. And I hope that they do a good job. I just put a post on my Facebook about how, Kenny Pickett, just, obviously my interest, broke his rib because he got hit hard by a Jacksonville player in a game 2 Sundays ago. He goes down on the ground. He breaks his rib. He can't finish the game. He comes back and he wins the next 2 games, but he doesn't do it in quite the style that people would want. And so I really believe, and I can't definitely say this, but you may agree with me. I really believe that when I started in this business, it would have been a bigger deal that he came back 4 days after he broke his rib and won a football game than the fact that he didn't average a lot of yards per attempt. That to me is what needs to change back more so than what I'm getting the information on.
Exactly. I agree. But like you said, move on or howl at the moon, right? You were fortunate to go see Purdue Xavier last night. And before we get to that, Mackenzie Mbako, That's a weird situation, and I know this is not something that hasn't happened before, but right now he is having a very difficult time adjusting, it seems to be, to the Division I game, or not only that, to Mike Woodson's system. Mike Woodson is not, and I've got to applaud Mike Woodson here. A lot of coaches would not sit a 5-star no matter what, just because of what that might say. He's like, hey, you want to play? Then play. And he's not grasping the system, it seems. And Indiana is looking like they're very vulnerable right now because the stars are not showing up. And then stars are becoming stars that they weren't expected, like Gabe Cupps. Because if I hear Gabe Cupps' name one more time from people, I'm going to jump into the water, man. But everybody loves Gabe Cupps. Well, he's a hard-nosed player. He's a good player. But you can't win with just Gabe Cupps. You've got to have stars, man. You've got to have guys that can produce and offense that produces in multiple ways. And Indiana does not have that at the moment.
No, I think the first problem that the team has, and this has been the one criticism or one persistent thread that we've seen through Mike's first 3 years, 2 years and 2 games, I should say, is that perimeter shooting is either not emphasized or not embraced or it's not abundant enough, however you want to say. I tend to go toward emphasized a little bit because you had Miller Kopp last year shooting a great percentage without many attempts. For a guy who was shooting the number he was, a lot of places are going to get him more attempts than Indiana did. So that's part of why the offense sometimes feels like it's a little bit less productive than it needs to be. But I also, I think that there's a couple of things that are at work there. First of all, the most difficult position for transitioning from high school to college is that 3 spot. It's easily the most difficult, especially if you're a legit, not if you're a 6'4" guy that they're playing there, because you're just basically playing your second guard spot, but you're moving it a few feet or on the opposite side of the floor or whatever. But if you're a true 3-man, you have existed to some degree on the fact that you're 6'8" and most of the guys you're playing against aren't. And so you've had that physical advantage for most of the last, 3-4 years, depending on when you sprouted up. And so you could always get that little advantage around the rim, and you're dynamic and athletic like Mackenzie is. And so you could get things done around the rim and come off as a more important player on your team. And now you come to Division I, and getting to the rim is harder, and not only because you're being defended by better players, but because you're being defended by schemes, much more sophisticated schemes than you're used to at lower levels. And 2, when you get there, there's a chance that somebody there can block your shot. There's a much better chance, I should say, than when you were in high school. Every now and then, if you're playing AAU, you're going to run into somebody, like a Ryan Kalkbrenner, say, and it's going to be, you're going to have to deal with that. But it's just not as common as it is in Division I, where it's on a lot of teams, if not most, certainly a plurality of teams. As they say in politics, you don't necessarily always get a majority, but if you get a plurality, you still get elected. So I think that's something for him as well. So I'm not that concerned about it relative to the development of the team. I think I expect that is going to be the case with most transitioning 3-men, and when you have the rare guy like a Grady Dick a year ago who could break out of that because he was an elite shooter. an absolutely A+ shooter. So it wasn't as bothersome to him. McKenzie's not an A+ shooter. Can be a good one, but he's not Grady Dick. So he's got to figure out how to score at the college level, and it very well may come. I think they're honestly, although they haven't played well to this point, I think that I'm much more focused on the fact that Khalil Ware has played really well in the first 2 games. Remember, he was the guy I was most worried about in terms of how, was there enough there? Obviously tall and long and skilled and all of that. But when you get into high major basketball, can you perform? Well, they haven't played their best opposition yet, but in 2 games against Division I opposition, he has been consistent. He has been able to perform. He's rebounded. He's blocked shots. He's used his length. He's not been overwhelmed physically. I think he's stronger. I think they had a good year, or a good offseason, I should say, since he arrived at Indiana. I think they've done good work with him and made him stronger. And he has turned that strength into toughness. And so from that standpoint, I think they're on the right track there. And you go next to Trey Galloway. Hey, in that first game against FGCU, the jump shot that Trey Galloway hit, that was big time. That he opened, it was the first 6-7 minutes, whatever it was. I don't remember the exact time, but he had a big time 3. In showing he can do that, he's showing he can change this team. We need to see more of that. So Trey's got to be more willing to do that, and IU has to be more eager to get him into those spots. I don't know that he's going to shoot the number that Miller Kopp shot last year. Miller Kopp's extraordinary at that. But I think that Trey can shoot 38. If you can shoot 38, you're a really good college 3-point shooter. If you can shoot 38 on more than 100 attempts, you can really make the difference for this team. And I think they've got to get toward that. I think he's got the ability to do that. So there have been positives, I think, in this as much as the concern about how Ibaka's played.
Well, and speaking of that, they'll get that opportunity. Last night, like I mentioned earlier, you were at the Xavier Purdue game. Tonight, we've got Duke, Michigan State, Kansas, Kentucky, the Maui Invitational that gets underway with a lineup that is just crazy. Tennessee, Gonzaga, Purdue, Syracuse, Kansas, UCLA. That sounds like a fist fight, man. What a lineup that is. So we're going to get a great treat over the next 3 weeks or whatever of just tournament type games. Hopefully the play will be up to that. A lot of these teams have shown that they're in pretty good form already. Indiana is not one of those, but they also will grow up fast, or it could be bad news for them in Madison Square Garden next Sunday when they take on number 5 UConn.
Well, if I'm them, my first concern is Wright State, because that's a team that has been really competitive in the Horizon League over the last half dozen years or so. So you got to make sure that you are prepared for that, because FGCU is a very good mid-major, low-major team. Army certainly brings toughness into the building, although they're a developing program under first-year head coach. So they're going to have to be better to beat Wright State. And obviously you want to be competitive in the UConn game. Winning the game, be nice, but you got to be competitive. I'm not saying that this is the way Xavier viewed it, but last night at Purdue, the real goal for Xavier was be competitive. They have 10 new players. The 2 returning regulars that they had, both are out with injuries and probably for the year. So they had to come here to West Lafayette, to Mackey, and be competitive in one of the most difficult environments in college basketball. And they were. They weren't great, but they were tough. And you can build on tough. So when they go to the Garden to play UConn, which is an extraordinarily talented team. They've got 2 lottery picks on their team. Stephon Castle, freshman, just a tremendous player, going to be a really special player for as long as he stays at UConn. And Donovan Clingan, their center, who could have been a first rounder, could have been a lottery pick last year, but wanted to stay and get better, not just get on a team in the league and then bounce around. He's got a chance to be a starting center in the NBA. And wisely chose to stick around and develop into that rather than just go and sort of G League, his way into being a pro. It's better to conquer. It's better to conquer at this level and show that you can become a dominant player. So really, I think he's really a gifted player. So it's a lot for Indiana to handle this soon in the season. Indiana's best basketball is going to be played hopefully in January and February, and it's going to be a developmental process until then.
Absolutely. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News with us right now. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll switch topics, and we're going to – I would not call it a debate because I would never debate anything with Mike. I'd get my butt kicked, and I might get it kicked in this, but I'll take the field, my 3-man field against Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Heisman, because I know he's a big Marvin Harrison Jr. fan. So we're going to talk about that in addition to the college football playoffs. And this is, man, I know we have 2 weeks to let some of it settle itself out, but right now it's looking very tantalizing on who will get that 4th spot. It lays itself out for the most part, but I think that there's going to be some consternation in that 4th spot, maybe. So we'll be back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Mike, did you go on with Billy Rutledge this morning?
Billy Rutledge
on the he was filling in for Mike Leach.
Oh yeah, I taped an interview with Mike yesterday afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah. I just saw I work at those stations, and I'm not friends with Billy, but I work with him, so I was curious if you talked to him.
Yeah. All right, not Mike, Tom Leach. Tom Leach.
Yeah. Did I say Mike Leach?
I think you suckered me into that. Yes.
my because your name's Mike, and then we're talking about Tom Leach.
Yes. Yes.
That's funny.
Tom Leach from the University of Kentucky Basketball Network.
He does an awesome job. He's a great guy.
He does a great job. Man, Michigan
I always
has
thought he sounded like sorry, I realized we both started talking at the same time. You go
No,
ahead,
you're fine, buddy. Usually there's not much I have to say that's important anyway, I promise.
I'll just say that his this isn't important either. Tom Leach's voice reminds me of Dan Patrick, and I don't know why, but it does.
Interesting. I'll have to listen for that. That never occurred to me, but I'll have to listen to that.
I almost used the last name Patrick when I was a TV sports anchor. instead of Coyle. My middle name's Patrick.
But what's wrong with Coyle?
Nothing. And that's why I find this. I'm like, just because it's one of those. Every time I get asked how to spell your name, nobody. Was that Coil? No.
You can't be serious.
I'm like, do you all not? Have you not heard Boyle, Coyle, Doyle? I mean, these are standard Irish names.
All right, here we go, guys.
I'm like,
That's garnishcatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of Wow Food Group. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
welcome back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, Southern Unit here on this Tuesday. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News with us, along with Big Ten Network. And Mike, I want to talk some college football now. Boy, there's so many things I can sit here and talk about all day long. But first, I want to get to the Michigan fans. I am sick and tired of Michigan in so many ways, 6 ways from sideways. This latest with the coach that did the post-game interview, crying and sobbing and cussing at the same time. That was, dropping an F-bomb. It was like, whoa. He's suspended, not set to be executed. What the hell are they doing? These people are crying. It's ridiculous. And I know that they're fighting to get what they think is theirs. And I understand that, but this whole thing has reached a state of unbelievable ridiculousness.
Well, what surprised me was that in this circumstance, the Big Ten only had so much that they could do. Although they had some big hammers they could have used. They theoretically, and I'm not saying they should have or whatever, but theoretically, they could have said, you can't play in our championship game. They could. That was within their purview. They had the ability to do that.
Like they did with Indiana and Ohio State during the COVID year.
More so.
That was a joke.
Yeah. More so about within the scope of the penalties that were available to them. That was one of the penalties that they can enforce. They can't ban Michigan from, let's say, obviously it doesn't. They can't ban Michigan from the college football playoff because it's not their tournament. See, just as they couldn't necessarily ban them from the NCAA tournament because it's not their tournament. But certainly in college football, where it's basically an independent deal, they couldn't ban them from that. But they could say, you can't come to Indy and play. They could have. And I'm not saying they should have. I'm saying they could have. So what I am saying is, and what I said in the column that I wrote upon Friday afternoon, upon the delivery of the penalty, was that this was a light penalty given the nature of the offense that the Big Ten has rendered, has issued a finding in. Again, I'm not assessing guilt. I haven't studied that, but the Big Ten says there's enough here for a punishment. So the punishment could have been, I believe, if they can suspend Jim Harbaugh, they could have sat down other Michigan coaches as well, and they did not. So they took the head coach out, which is not nothing, but it's not an enormous penalty for the operation of a football game. Head coach on game day has maybe a few big decisions to make, and otherwise is largely there are things that a good head coach does, but the absence of that, a lot can be transacted that is ordinarily transacted. So it wasn't a huge punishment is the point I'm making. And it's being treated as if it were. It's like, look, if we're going to punish you really heavily, you'll know it. And as I said, that would have been saying Indy is not for you. not this year. And there are ways that could have been justified because, again, the allegation is that it occurred in this football season, which means games were impacted in this football season that have led you toward the path where you are 2 games away from playing in Indy. And for those who want to assert that it really wasn't that big a deal, then why did they go to so much trouble to do these things according to the Big Ten? If it's not that big a deal, why would you go to so much trouble? I mean, because this is not what's been alleged is not a small thing. Money was spent, technology was used, information was transferred, and then information was presented to people who could use it to make decisions. That's what the Big Ten has found.
And they fought the Big Ten on providing some of that information.
Yes.
And the Big Ten ultimately won out. But that just shows they are continuously trying to hide the fact of what they did. So it's like, shut up, stop. But
I think, honestly, I think some of the reaction is to distract from this was not a good thing. I mean, this is not something that Michigan should be proud of. So if you crow about the penalty, then that part of it gets pushed down. I think Michigan is fortunate to be where they stand today, where they are now still eligible for the postseason. They were able to go up to Penn State with all but one member of their coaching staff and execute a game plan on Saturday. It was very effective, very impressive how they beat Penn State, no question. But they're fortunate to be where they are today. And they're fortunate that that they'll go to Maryland on Saturday in the same circumstance, presumably, depending on what happens in court. And then they're fortunate that they'll be able to most likely then go home for 2 days after Thanksgiving to play their arch rival for the Big Ten East Championship. They are fortunate, and they should embrace their good fortune here. But that's not what's happened.
I agree. In the Heisman race, you have been a noted proponent of Marvin Harrison Jr., and he's one of the great players in the game. Definitely, possibly the best receiver, without question. But there are a lot of good receivers, and Ohio State has a couple of those. But I disagree that he is in the top 3 of the Heisman race. When I look at Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels and still Michael Penix, and that doesn't even include Caleb Williams from last year, who are all just doing phenomenal things. And my reasoning is because the quarterback has so many different things that they do to impact the game. And I hate, I'm not saying that the Heisman is a quarterback's award. It is not.
But it is. But you are.
It's become that. Well, it's become that.
It has.
Not only is it worse and worse, it's become a popularity contest because the only knock on Jaden Daniels has been, well, his team lost 3 times. Well, what the hell? What the hell does that have to do with? Maybe they should have a defense that can stop Ole Miss. That's not his fault. He has nothing to do with that. So that stuff drives me insane. And I don't know. Jaden Daniels is, and I'd love to see Michael Penix Jr. win it. But boy, Jaden Daniels he's just looking good in what he's doing. He just became the first quarterback or player in FBS history to throw for 350 and rush for 200. Bo Nix has Oregon, as much as I hate to say it, they might be better than Washington, but they're probably going to get a chance to find that out, and they'll figure that out themselves. But they have just looked unbelievable. Michael Penix still leading the nation in passing yards by a margin. And they just are affecting the game in different ways, I think, because they have to make these decisions. They have to read those routes. They have to do that. And that's the only reason I would put all of them above, say, a Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Well, it's a harder job. I'm not saying it's not. There's no question about that. It is a harder job to play quarterback. It's probably the hardest job in all of sports. It's really a complicated endeavor, and it's why there are so few that succeed at it at the highest level. Why it's so hard to find someone who can consistently succeed at that level. But my feeling about Jaden Daniels is that although he's extraordinary, and this is not a criticism, when you're playing in games where there's less consequence, it's also an easier job than playing in a game where you may be the decisive factor in whether your team stays alive for the national championship. I mean, LSU was basically out of it in 2 weeks. And so they've scored a lot of points. They have a really exciting attack, exciting offense. Even in the losses that they've had, the last two, they've scored over 25 points. So they've continued to perform well, but we're not sure how good the teams that they have been able to beat are. The teams, they played two basically mid majors in Grambling and Army. That's two of their wins. Florida's not a very good SEC team. They're only 500. Auburn is a poor SEC team, under 500 in the league. So, I look at what Marvin Harrison has to do, and if he's not extraordinary every weekend, they're going to lose at some point. Not every game, but like the Notre Dame game, he gets stepped on inadvertently on his Achilles, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this could be the end of his season. He comes back in the fourth quarter and makes the biggest play of the game. That even on a night when he's not super productive, or at Rutgers when Rutgers did a really good defensive job on him and on the Buckeyes, he still shakes loose for the two biggest touchdowns of the game. I'm a believer in him as a talent and as a performer, and that's why I've advocated for that. In part because I think that you need to have the discussion that goes beyond what quarterback has the best record. That's the Gino Torretta, Jason White Heisman. When Jason White beats Larry Fitzgerald. Think about that now, 20 years later, right? Larry Fitzgerald, one of the all-time greatest receivers in the history of football. And Jason White, did he play any football beyond Oklahoma? I'm not. If he did, it wasn't much. So, those kinds of things shouldn't dot history. Every name that you look at on the Heisman list should be, oh, wow, I remember that guy. He was amazing. And for the longest time it was, but over the last 2 decades or so, it's morphed away from that. 3 decades, if you go back to Torretta.
Absolutely. Mike is in still West Lafayette, heading up to Chicago to the United Center for a pair of great games tonight. So you enjoy that. That should be fun.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing all 4 of those teams. I think they all have terrific teams. One of Duke or Michigan State's going to have 2 losses after tonight. That'll be 2 losses in the first 8 days of the season. I don't think either coach is looking forward to that. But that's one of the beauties of college basketball is teams can learn from their struggles and or failures, and by the end of the year, play for a championship legitimately and have a shot at it. Whereas in college football, if you stumble early, they never let you forget it, and then they don't let you play in their playoff, which maybe won't be the case next year, but still is for 2023.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, brother. We look forward to talking about these games next week because there's going to be a lot in between then and now.
And we can hash out that college football playoff possibility.
We'll have more to talk about, there's no doubt, as we get closer and closer, and I cannot wait because the teams will settle some of that themselves, but it's going to be fun. The great Mike DeCourcy, make sure you're giving him a follow and going to the Sporting News and catch him on the BTN. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Jim.
You bet. Hey, we've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with that right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Tony V, no, I didn't ban you. You asked me, or someone asked if I played golf. I was just saying no time. I did not have time to play golf. There was no time to play golf, is what I was saying. And I don't always see the comments in time as well. So you guys got to bear with me, man.
I've got Woodson and Xavier Johnson sound if you want to use it this segment.
Sure. What is it?
Woodson's comment is about playing guys who play the right way, and Xavier's is his comment about them not going hard enough in practice.
See, what I don't get is, boy, it is not hot.
Does it feel nice?
It does.
That's good.
And as soon as I get done, I am going to the place called Big Ten Tavern for lunch.
Oh, that's cool.
It's like all Big Ten.
Wow.
So,
are you in Derek Jackson country?
You're kidding me. What?
Are you in Derek Jackson country?
Oh, I forget where he lives. Come on, man. Are you kidding me? Can you hear that lawnmower very much?
Yeah, I can hear it, but it's not the worst sound. I mean, if it comes really close, it might be bad, but...
Yeah, if he comes real close, I might shoot him.
Don't say that.
I don't have a gun, so... All right, this is open and chronic.
Yes. And then Nizelak at 10:10.
Nizelak. But the smell of freshly cut grass you can't tell. This damn sound's bouncing off from everywhere. Holy moly! Muli, 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 muli.
All right, here we go. There couldn't be a better time to build a new home with Property Shore Construction. Now building exclusively south of Bloomington within the Stonecrest Golf community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Rebesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. Thanks so much for being with us. Greatly appreciated. As always, I hope your day is going well. Just finished up with Mike DeCourcy. Mike Nizelak joins us in the next segment, or actually Chronic Hoosier joins us in the next segment, and then Mike Nizelak from the Bloomington Herald Times after that. We can go on a little bit more in-depth conversation with those guys. But before we get to that, Mike Woodson and Xavier Johnson met with the media, of course, after the Army game. And Mike Woodson is not mincing words. I mean, he's calling his team out for their lack of play, for their lack of hustle. And let's just hear what Mr. Woodson had to say.
We're going to play guys that want to play and play the right way. And the last two games, that small lineup coming down the stretch was pretty good for us. So, I don't know if we'll live with it the rest of the season, but they keep making plays down the stretch, I think it'll be okay for us.
That was in response to being asked about how that 3-guard lineup, Gabe Cups, Trey Galloway, Xavier in there, how it worked toward the end of games, and if that would be something that they would continue. Yeah, but that's not going to work when you get up against UConn. That's not going to work when you get up against Kansas. IU fans, I know that you all love Gabe Cups. I know that you all love Trey Galloway, but Gabe Cups is going to be a really, really good player. I don't think he's to that elite level. I know for a fact that Trey Galloway is not, and that is a lineup that would take a lot of discipline. You would have to make sure that Malik Renew is not getting in foul trouble. You would need to make sure that Kellel Ware is playing in the first half as well as he's playing in the second half. But that's not going to settle the issue. You have to have your best players playing their best. Mackenzie Mbako cannot be sitting his ass on the bench because, as of his own making. And I'm a little surprised, but my biggest question is, well, let's go ahead and hear from Xavier Johnson first on his take on things.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. In practice, we got young guys, including myself. I'm not young, but including me, Gallo, and just the whole team. We're not going as hard. I think our preparation led to that, and that's what I believe.
I appreciate the honesty, but was he talking about just this game, or because it can't be just this game? And so my question is, was this not noticed before? And it's not just these guys. He's talking about they're not going as hard. Obviously, Mackenzie Mbako's not going hard enough. Was this not seen prior to these games? They've been together all summer. So I don't understand that.
Well, and here's the other thing too with that, and again, appreciating the honesty of Xavier Johnson. For someone like him, who is one of the leaders for this team, or at least supposed to be, it is part of his responsibility to make sure that not only he is practicing hard, but the rest of the team rallies around his effort. If he knows that he's not giving effort and he's one of the leaders of this team, then no one else is going to give the effort that he's also not giving. So a lot of it falls on Xavier Johnson. If he's going to be the face of this Indiana program for the 2023-2024 basketball season, he himself, it starts with him, and obviously Mike Woodson is the head coach, but in terms of player leadership, it starts with Xavier Johnson.
I agree with that, but he has to lead by example. But and I apologize for the mowing sound this morning. I did not plan on that, obviously. Today, he's got to pick his game up. He's got to pick other players up. But it's not just him. It's also Trey Galloway. But again, I know Trey Galloway is a fan favorite. He's a glue guy, but he's still not the level of player that Indiana needs to have to challenge and succeed at the top of the Big Ten, much less nationally. And with certain other players not playing hard and not coming along, Caleb Banks and CJ Gunn have also been called out by Mike Woodson that he needs more from them when they're in the game. And so I don't understand why it's just now that it's being seen. I know everybody says, well, it's only been 2 games. They've been together since last June. So it's not about the games. I just wonder why this wasn't recognized sooner. But Indiana is going to have to use these as wake-up calls themselves individually. And if they don't, that could lead to a hard season, because these other Big Ten teams, man, they want to win. And especially beating Indiana along the way, everybody loves that. And they will take every opportunity to do just that. Boy, this is going to be fun. Sorry about John Boy.
A bit of mowing going on. Look at that, coming right behind. If you're on screen or if you're watching on YouTube, the lawnmower just went behind Jim. And maybe during our next commercial break, there might be an opportunity to move locations and get away. And obviously, you're not hearing it right now. Jim's muted his microphone, but the landscaping people are currently right behind where our boy Jim is set up doing the show today.
Yeah, but the good thing is it only took 2 swipes there. So we're good and safe now.
Well, good. Hopefully he stays away.
Derek says I keep seeing people upset of the look of threes that Indiana is shooting. Yet Woody even said this past Sunday, this team is not going to be a team that jacks up a lot of threes, and that's fine. They will shoot them here and there. Well, they don't have to. They have a lineup that should have allowed them to do a number of different things well and not have to rely on something solely like the three-point shot. You've got Kel'el Ware, who has performed well. You've got Malik Renew, who is back for his second year. So he's got a Big Ten season under his belt, one of which he played under an NBA player, Trace Jackson Davis. Then there's the Mackenzie Mbako that has been counted on so much. But you take that out of the equation, and that's a hard hole for Indiana to fill, and they have not found a way to fill that yet. And now Woody's having to quickly scramble and change things about. Whether that works out or not, you'll see. But man, oh man, I'm afraid of what could happen up in New York against UConn. This UConn is playing pretty well already, and it could be embarrassing, or it could be an opportunity. It is an opportunity, chance for Indiana to come out.
Chance for Indiana to come out and I guess make a statement is where Jim was going as the lawnmower makes its way back around to where he's sitting.
Yeah, I think he wasn't happy with disrupting things once, so
or maybe he realized he was what he was doing and wanted to have a little bit of fun. Like, I'm going to come back and mess up what this guy's doing.
Yeah, missed a spot. Hey, you missed a spot. Just kidding. But it's an opportunity for Indiana to come out and bow up.
Just show they can play with the big boys.
Bow up and give the effort that apparently some have not been giving. The fact that you are a 5-star and you're getting called out by your coach and benched, basically. Benched. This is one of the most sought-after recruits in the country. And he's, in essence, being benched barely into the season. Not benched permanently, of course. But he played, 5 minutes in the second half of the last game? 5 minutes. Not because he was hurt. Because he wasn't doing anything. Five Left's asking, how much do I think that the incident involving Mackenzie Mbako and the police has to do with the team? None. I don't think that there's any bearing whatsoever with that. I don't see how that has anything. Nah. He's not playing hard. How much does that incident show that maybe there's a reason why he's not playing hard? That's a question. And what I mean is a little bit of entitlement. I'm not saying that that's what happened, but that brings up that question of that possibility. So there's always that. But that's what I meant, John.
Break.
All right, man. We've got Chronic Hoosier up next here from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hello, sir.
What up?
You know it, brother. How's everything going with you?
Oh, another day in paradise. Doing great. How are you guys doing today?
Cannot complain. Cannot complain. Heavy night of basketball online. Looking forward to going to the soccer game Thursday. So they did not get a national seed, I'm assuming.
They did not. They made it in, which was no small feat considering where they were like at the end of September. This very much looked like a year they were going to break the streak, but strength of schedule still wasn't enough to justify the national seed.
And that means that they will just not be getting to play at home past this opening 2 rounds.
Depending on who wins and loses.
Correct.
So they could.
If Chalk wins out, we're on the road after the first. There is a chance, but I haven't even looked at the bracket beyond this Thursday. I know we've got pretty much the meat of the ACC to go through, but if Chalk wins out, we go on the road after Thursday. And then if Chalk doesn't hold,
Forest gets a bye, so they'll automatically face Wake Forest on the road if they win.
Correct. Which is also one of the advantages of a national seed is you play one less game.
Yeah, Indiana's on kind of a roll right now. I think it's better for them to keep playing.
No, honestly, they if the sun rises or the sun sets and Indiana soccer plays its best ball when cups are on the line, just the way it is. And the way it should be for every program. You want to, you want to be your best come tournament time.
Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. It would damn sure suck if the College Cup is, with it being in Louisville, if this is one of the years that they wouldn't make it. That would just
Probably won't be the last time it's in Louisville.
Hoosier soccer fans will travel. You can put it pretty much anywhere, and they're going to have a very strong turnout. Home crowd, not depending, but Louisville would be next level. I think that would actually give it's great park. It would give the students real good access to the game, which you don't get a lot of traditionally at the College Cup, unless it's one of the host teams.
All right. Here we go, guys.
And everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop, Market and Table, a part of the Wow Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. Thanks a lot for being with us. Brought to you by Andy Moore Honda. Just go to andymoorehonda.com to get more to your door. And delivered right to our door today, Chronic Hoosier, how are you, sir?
Glad to be back, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. I know that you were stoked to see Indiana get past Penn State last Sunday, as they will continue their massive streaks and records and continuation of NCAA records. I think consecutive appearances. I don't even know.
37 straight.
Well, I don't even know how many records that they have extended with this.
That's the thing. When you're a program like Indiana men's soccer, every time you post a W, you're setting a new record. And I don't say that flippantly. I mean, just literally, it's just what they do. They win, and they win at a level that's really unprecedented in college sports since their inception. It's nothing short of just absolutely ridiculous. But even more ridiculous this year for me was a team that most people thought was dead in the water at the end of September, likely to break the consecutive tournament streak. With little to no chance of competing for a Big Ten title. And then, as Yeagley's do, they go ahead and pull off the double, bring home 2 of the 3 goals for the season, and get themselves in prime position for the third and the ultimate goal, which is the ninth start, an NCAA tournament. And it starts this Thursday here in Bloomington. So always fun to get to see the boys play in tournament time. As a lifelong IU soccer fan, it's just kind of ingrained in you. You know, when the weather starts to turn and get a little nastier outside, you know the consequences just go up. And as luck would have it, that always seems to be when the Hoosiers are playing their best. And this year is probably just the exemplary year for that mindset. You know, playing your best ball when cups are on the line. And Hoosiers coming into the tournament hot. And as we've seen in years past, when Indiana kind of dominated throughout the season, oftentimes it's not necessarily the best team in the field that wins it, but the one that's playing its best soccer. And Indiana certainly has a case to be among those teams this year.
Seems to be that way at all of sports. Yeah, you got to get hot at the right moment. We were, before you joined us, was talking about Indiana basketball at the moment, and Stephen, thinks that I'm being a little harsh on them. I'm not being harsh. I'm not saying anything other than what has been said by Mike Woodson, or asking questions that are legit questions. And they've stated themselves, they're not playing hard. They're not preparing hard. And part of it is they have to take that upon themselves. Partly it's a coach's responsibility as well, but the players have to take this upon themselves. This is not something you can sleepwalk through. There are a litany of teams that are ready to go at it tonight. We get to watch Kansas and Kentucky, Duke and Michigan State this weekend. A slate of games. It's going at it and being ready to play as hard as you can, no matter what. And Mike Woodson has pointed out that hasn't exactly been the case for his squad so far.
No, I think that's totally fair assessment. I think that's not even a subjective opinion necessarily, as much as that's coming from, from the head coach. That's coming from some of the players that have been given the chance to speak with the media afterwards. And quite frankly, I think it just resonates with what everyone has seen with their eyes in these first 2 regular season games is, it's just not good enough. The effort's not good enough. The intensity's not good enough. The execution's not good enough. And they're running out of runway here in order to get locked in on that, because after Thursday's tilt against Wright State, you got Connecticut. You then get Maryland, Michigan, Auburn, and Kansas. You absolutely don't want to be upside down on the schedule heading into the winter break. And that's a very real possibility for Indiana right now if they can't figure out exactly what type of a team they are and how they want to play. And, from what we've seen from Mike Woodson coach's teams, it's going to take a whole lot more on the defensive end, first and foremost. And the offense is always going to be a little bit behind, I think, especially in a season like this with so many new faces. But at the end of the day, they've got to commit to playing a higher level of defense than what we've seen right now, because quite frankly, you cannot take teams that are not 3-point shooting teams and let them just light you up like they have. They've been completely nonplussed in defending the perimeter and contesting for rebounds, loose balls, and the like. And those are just things of intensity. That's one. It's will. And so far it's been lacking. So it's time to get that fixed real quick, because come Sunday, the Hoosiers stand a very real chance of falling into a similar trap to what the women's basketball team faced out in Palo Alto this last weekend, which is just walking into an absolute meat grinder. And it's just not a fun way to start the season, especially when you had so many hopes right now. So I'm not writing the season off just yet, but I am certainly among those
Oh, by no means.
who have been pretty heavily disappointed with what we've seen thus far from the Hoosiers.
And it is a little surprising, but if it's just effort, then that's something that can be rectified. And hopefully for Hoosier fans, that's how that will be. A few great points to look at is the play of Khalil Ware. The only thing that negative you knock on him right now is he needs to play as well in the first half as he does the second half.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's been kind of stark is, in matchups where Indiana just has head and shoulders advantage, literally and figuratively, as far as height, length, athleticism, and skill. Just an unwillingness to exert that. I think in both games, Woody has tried to play big, and in both games he's had to revert to going small. And you would expect a team as seemingly capable as the Hoosiers to be able to dictate play, to play how they want to. And that hadn't been the case, quite frankly, and it's largely been because of the defensive breakdowns that have forced them to adjust the rotations. So that's a little bit troubling, considering how much athleticism, how much length Indiana has. And Khalil's one of those guys you would expect, when you're playing guys that you've got an entire head over, you should be able to dominate, kind of like JV versus varsity. And he's put up some numbers. I wouldn't quite put the play anywhere near the category of dominance. So, and it could be he's not built for that. I'm not saying one way or another he is or isn't. That's why we play the game, to figure out who we are. But it's been a little bit disappointing in that regard that they haven't been able to sustain it. They haven't been able to really push when they want. I know this isn't going to be a post-driven team like we've seen in years past, but that's not to say, especially when the shots aren't falling from outside, that you shouldn't be able to dump it down and just get a guaranteed bucket.
Yeah, it could be because they do have some I wouldn't call them veterans, obviously, with Khalil Ware being a sophomore and Malik Renew being a sophomore, but experienced players, at least Malik Renew. He had a ton of experience last year, and then playing behind Trace Jackson Davis or with Trace Jackson Davis gave him a good education there. And he's been okay this season. I wouldn't say anything spectacular, but he's been okay. He's not somebody who I think is going to be the leading scorer of this team. I think Khalil Ware will ultimately be the leading scorer for this team. And he's shown that he has that penchant for being able to put up some big numbers, even though it's been in the second half, to light a fire. And when that fire gets lit, he comes alive, and he can affect the game so much differently than probably anybody else on the court, because, again, he does have the ability of passing out of whether it's in the post or wherever, with his height, blocking. He can alter shots. And then, of course, offensively, what he can get done. So he's obviously Indiana's most I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but the player who can do the most as far as different talents.
No, he certainly has one of the highest ceilings on the team, and I think in that conversation, just as we think Khalil can really perform. The flip side of that coin is how much potential we haven't seen realized thus far from Mbako. With the accolades he brings, the attributes, 2 points, a couple of turnovers, couple of boards, that's a stat line you'd expect from your 8th and 9th guy off the bench. Certainly not one of your starters. Certainly not a 5-star come in. And as Woody made clear, he's going to have to learn how to play the ball the right way on both ends of the floor. And I think it starts on the defensive end with him. But it's been pretty underwhelming thus far. I'm curious to see if he continues to run only with the two, the 3 big set, rather than sliding him to the 4 when they go small, and see if he can't get a little bit more active that way. But when you look at unrealized potential on that roster right now, in the first couple of games, I think Mbako is probably at the front of the line on guys the Hoosiers are going to need more from on a night-to-night basis. And then, I would go down the bench and say probably Trey Galloway's not far behind that as a captain and senior leader on the team and a starting guard. But I'm also looking at that bench top to bottom and say, if Indiana's going to have a chance to compete, they've got to be able to leverage their depth. And part of that means those guys coming in when they hear the number called, they've got to go out and contribute on both ends of the floor. But they're going to have to get points. You can't just have an offensive breakdown whenever the starters sit. And that was certainly something that was a little bit concerning in this weekend's game against Army. That bench really didn't give a whole lot, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think that also I just realized one of the things that Indiana is just really, really missing right now is Ja'Kai Newton, because he could put pressure on Mbako, whether it's in practice. I don't think Mbako, who's going to push him? A walk-on? So, and it's not like playing a regular game, of course. Not having him there has maybe had more of an ill effect than we know.
Yeah, quite possibly. And right now his greatest teacher is hopefully going to be the bench, because Woody has not been afraid to use the Pine as a teaching tool with him. And I don't know how much longer he's going to be afforded that opportunity. When you start up in the level of play like Indiana's going to see here in the coming weeks, you're running into a murderer's row of opponents here, and Indiana has got to be able to match them athletically, physically, especially at that spot. It's very much a guards game, but when you look at the teams that are able to really hurt you, guys like Mbako have been a thorn in Indiana's side for a long time. Just such a difficult matchup when they're on. So for Indiana to have an asset like that, they've got to find a way to get him more involved, both in the offense as well as the defense. And I think one of the struggles so far is Indiana's has not been able to get out and transition nearly as much as I think you'd like to see, which is I think probably where guys like McKenzie and Khalil, for that matter, are going to be a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more effective. But that's got to start on the defensive end, quite frankly. And if they're not able to get stops and create some turnovers, it's going to be hard if they're constantly forced into a half-court set as the offense is trying to figure out exactly what its rhythms are, because right now it's very much not very rhythmic offensively. So get some easy buckets, get some steals, and get the crowd involved. When you've got Assembly Hall behind you, it's tough sitting there and watching a half where people barely get out of their seats because, quite frankly, the basketball is just a little bit uninspired. And it's going to be there in the second half, but give them a reason to get out of their seat early on. Play some of that crunch time ball early, get a lead, get a little bit of a cushion, then start to grow it. And for the love of God, let's cover a spread once this season.
Indiana football losing to Illinois in a very hard-fought game. Offensively, they gave everything they had. They scored 43 points, which is enough points to win most games. Unfortunately, the defense left the stadium, and it was just mind-boggling to watch a backup quarterback for Illinois throw like he was Michael Penix and just destroying Indiana's defense, which had played well the previous. They played well at Penn State. They had been playing well, or better at least, but this was a complete and total collapse, and that has to be very, very disappointing for Indiana fans.
I'm still struggling to articulate how I feel after watching that game. For an offense that's been largely dormant most of the season. Credit to Rod Carey and Sorsby for that matter. Put together an absolute gem, honestly. I thought the play calling was as good as we've seen this season. I thought the execution was great. 22 for 33 attempts, 8.8 yards per pass, 13 yards per completion. Just phenomenal performance offensively. Something we haven't seen in a minute from the Indiana Hoosiers. and then to go out and lay the mother of all eggs on defense with the season on the line against the bottom dweller in the Big Ten West, and then just to continue to trip in the secondary over and over and over in high leverage moments throughout the game. Just devastating. Absolutely devastating to obviously the program's hopes for a bowl berth. That's now out the window. The Hoosiers are mathematically eliminated from bowl eligibility. There's always that asterisk that there may be some 5-7 teams that get the invite. Put those to bed right now. It ain't going to be the Indiana Hoosiers. Not this season. Not with the support that they're generating at the moment. Just really unfortunate across the board. Where the kind of like the soccer team was dead in the water. A lot of folks felt the same thing about football, and I called it. Last time we spoke before the Wisconsin game, I said, as bad as it seems, there is very much a clear path to bowl eligibility here, and a very winnable path to bowl eligibility. And to go on the road to Champaign against a backup quarterback, and just what an absolute stinker on the defensive side. On a unit that's supposed to be this team's strength, just devastatingly unfortunate, and one of those losses that you get the sense is going to reverberate for some time. And I don't know exactly where this goes. Every time I open up my screen, there's another ridiculous buyout being paid across the nation. I don't think Indiana's there. I'm not saying rightly or wrongly. But it just makes the conversation that much messier because, again, when it's on the line and you have a chance to flip the narrative, they play right into it. And it's unfortunate on a lot of different levels, not the least of which for all those guys on the offensive side of the ball that have, justifiably gotten beat up pretty bad this year by the fans, by the media. For them to turn things around as starkly as they have here in a short time, and then to let it all slip away on the defensive side is it's just yet another and absolutely heartbreaking losses for the Hoosiers in just a new inexplicable manner.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of buyouts, I read something yesterday that since 2022 there's been something like $196 million paid in buyouts. So that includes some assistant coaches as well. But it's just a crazy, astronomical figure, and something that some people use to say, if you're paying this much money, it's called dead money. If you can pay this kind of money, then why aren't the players being paid?
Honestly, if that doesn't put that conversation to bed, I don't know what does. And I know Congress is going to continue to do its dog and pony show, filling in for the NCAA's lack of a justifiable reason to continue its amateurism model. But let's be honest here. When you're talking about those figures, and I know not every school has this type of award chest. A&M is absolutely in a different bonker stratosphere with how they value the football program. But that being said, I know there's plenty of numbers guys that will tell you this is justifiable for a program like theirs simply because they have that type of potential, how they're situated. And I'm not saying Indiana is anywhere close to being on the same page as A&M when it comes to that, but the scale still applies. And ultimately, you have to look at the opportunity cost of not making a change, of not making a move, what the cost of the next best thing is, or what the cost of Stacia is for that matter. And it becomes increasingly stark with each game that you see so many unfilled seats and, the television numbers and the ratings. It's just unfortunate that we're here. 'Cause it wasn't that long ago. People were shouting from the rooftop that, this was something to be proud of. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be proud of the Hoosiers. I just think it's disappointing how they've fallen, how close they've come, how they've been unable to get over the hump. But at the end of the day, there's some hard conversations ahead at some pretty high levels, and I don't know exactly how that shakes out. I don't even know if they happen this year, quite honestly. There's a very real possibility that the current course has already been set, and they're just going to ride it, and that's the decision they've made. But today is the day of giving. In for Indiana, or whatever the catchphrase is right now. rightfully making a push to get as much contributions to their NIL efforts and attention to those as possible, because quite frankly, that's what makes the world go around nowadays. And anything you can do that increases that war chest is going to give you a better chance to compete in this landscape. Because quite honestly, you look at schools like A&M across the SEC, Big Ten for that matter, they're playing a totally different game when it comes to the financial side of NIL and contracts and everything else. And I know a lot of Hoosiers like to talk a big game. Well, today's the day to put your money where your mouth is, and every day forward for that matter, because quite frankly, it's one thing to want a better football team. It's another thing to make the enumerated actions that contribute towards that. And it generally comes down to a checkbook. And, I'm not saying that's the end all be all. You've certainly got to have other things in place with your program. But when you look at where Indiana is probably falling behind the most in football, that's probably A1, A2, A3 as far as what they need to address if they want to compete in this landscape.
Yeah, the InForIndiana.com website is connected to the Hoosiers for Good, Hoosiers Connect, Indiana's NIL program, who are having a massive day of giving today, and they're doing a lot of different things in addition to having a matching donor on there. So they're using this as the biggest, as a big push. And although it's it would be a lot easier if everybody was winning and everyone was happy, no doubt about that, but it is what it is. So Crowder, can't thank you enough as always, brother. Look forward to it each and every week.
Hey, thanks for having me. Sorry I missed you guys last week. Huge shout out to Dr. David Porter, IU medicine grad, one of the best foot surgeons in the nation. Put my boy back together last week. I wasn't able to join you, but they got him screwed back together, and he is on the mend and healing up. So super grateful for Indiana University and the many different ways it's impacted my family, not the least of which keeping a lot of my family members alive and put together. So super grateful.
Great to hear it. Great to hear that the positive outcome. Chronic Hoosier here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We've got more coming up. Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times joins us next, right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. All right. I reached out to Mr. Niziolek in case he wasn't aware, but we'll see. Just a heads up, Jim, you're muted. I don't know if you know that. Okay.
Yes, sir, but thank you. Damn lawnmower. Oh, don't forget to run the banner. Boy, I could have used this break in a different way.
There, here we go. Excuse me.
$9. That's better than a birdie. But you don't have to be a student to play at Eagle Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. Hope all is going well. Taco Tuesday. Maybe that always sounds good. I could have tacos every day. I've been using my air fryer, John, to make my own tacos. Have I told you about
that's
this?
an interesting method for tacos.
Oh, well, everything else is prepared separately. Nothing to do with the air fryer. Whether it's chicken or beef, that's prepared, and chop all the other stuff up and all that business. But Ortega has these square bottom shells. I guarantee you, this is going to be a segment on your Out of Touch podcast. Ortega has these square bottom shells, which are awesome. And they have them like flavored with like cheddar and jalapeno and stuff. It's crazy. Anyway, I take like 3 of them and I take a tortilla shell, put them in the air fryer, start heating those up, pull them back out for a second. You drop some cheese in between the tortilla shell and the shell and kind of bind them together. Then you just another minute or so in there. Then you pull them out, throw everything in there, dress them up, and voila.
Chef Coyle with his air fryer meal of the day.
Man, it is delicious, no doubt. I hope everybody's doing well. Mike Noslak looks like not able to join us today. We'll see if he pops on. But lots coming up for Indiana. Like I said, Purdue just finished their game last night against Xavier, in which they get a nice win. Talked about Zach Edey dropping 10 pounds. He talked about the reasoning he did that was to show that he can play at the next level, that he can step out and guard guys that normally you wouldn't expect him to be able to do. He pointed out the Arkansas game and is an example of that. And a more mobile Zach Edey is not good news for anybody else. I'll tell you that, because if he's able to become more athletic and do things away from the basket, he just becomes more valuable as an NBA prospect, but as a player for Purdue. And what they're going to the gauntlet they'll go through right now. Number 2, Purdue, I should say. And they head off to the Maui Classic. That's going to be fascinating. That lineup that's in that thing, my goodness. I don't have it memorized, but I remember UCLA, Tennessee. Is Kansas in that thing? I can't remember, but Kansas is playing.
Kansas is in it. Purdue, Gonzaga. Few others I don't know off the top, but Marquette's in it. A lot of, and then obviously Chaminade,
of course, Chaminade.
Division
Who could forget Chaminade?
The Silver
Giant
Sword.
Slayer. But yeah, Jamie pointing out the Xavier Purdue game had good intensity last night. Well, Xavier, decent team, all those new players. So I don't know how good they're going to be. That's definitely going to take a minute. I noticed that Rick Pitino and his squad took it on the chin from Michigan. And I know they have a lot of new faces there, but Michigan's surprising a little bit. They were, with all the things that are going on with Juwan Howard's health and the losing his son, they're not looking so bad right now. The Big Ten is going to be a quagmire, man. I'm telling you, it's going to be different than last year, where Purdue had just an easy schedule. Although they got through it, they had an easy schedule. And this year, that's not going to be the case. They're going to be challenged more. Michigan State, we're not sure exactly where they are at the moment. And then after that, as we've said, Illinois, Maryland, Ohio State, Indiana, the Hoosier fans are certainly hoping that that is the case. And because the talent is there, there's no question. And Mike Woodson right now having to do some coaching, having to reach guys in different ways, whether that's motivating or getting them to understand, whether we're talking about playing hard, playing defense right, doing the right things. Someone pointed out the switching issues. The 3-point defense has really been a little mystifying to me because these guys have just been so wide open sometimes. But not just that, part of the reason is because of not making the effort to recover fast enough. You can't half-ass it. And I've seen that a lot. Guys go, oh, yeah, and let me get back out there. And it's almost a gratuitous defense. Well, you can't do that, man. These guys have been practicing their shots. You give them wide open shots, it's like knocking down a three. Caleb said Smith and Lawyer struggled to defend quick guards. They were routinely getting beat off the dribble last night. Well, we'll see how that turns out. I'm not saying that they're the two best defensive guards in the country for sure. Still young as sophomores, and I don't know how great defensive players they have been so far because I have not seen them play. The offense has been enough. Robert talking about the 3-point defense has been poor for the last several years. Well, he's not lying about that, but it's for different reasons. Right now, it just seems like misunderstandings, miscommunications, and a lack of effort. Those are some bad ingredients. You can have one, but having, if you misunderstanding, that you can recover from that. You can fix that. That lack of effort, it can be fixed, but that's what you question. You wonder why. This is an opportunity. These guys have been given opportunities to perform and to perform on a big stage. Guys like Mackenzie Mbako, who said his goal is to only be in Bloomington 1 year. And he didn't mean transfer at the time. He meant getting to the league. Well, you've got to do all of the things that you have to do. And I'm not in this in practice section, so I have no direct knowledge of how McKenzie is playing. But we've heard Todd Leary say how great of a shooter he is. And we've seen him do that. And I think that right now it's a little bit of a confidence issue with him. I think it's a little bit of a pride issue, maybe. And that's both. Those are human. That's human reaction, especially as an 18-year-old kid. He's probably never been benched in his life. And he's got one of two ways to take that. You can just get angry and mope, or you can use it for self-internal motivation and say, hey, if I truly want to get to the next level, if that's what I want to do, if that's my career path, then I guess I better pick it up. And again, I'm not saying that he's not doing these things. This stuff comes from Mike Woodson. This stuff comes from Xavier Johnson, the guys that are in the practice every day, that are a part of the team. That's not me saying this. I don't have a problem expressing my opinions. I think you know that, but these aren't even my opinions. Taking this directly from the horse's mouth. So Early it is. The only bad thing is they have a gauntlet coming up, and it starts with UConn. They've got to play Wright State this Thursday, which, again, sad that Indiana football basketball cannot get it together this year. I don't know how many times those two have been scheduled to play at the same time, but that is happening again this week, unfortunately, for IU soccer, but I don't think that will hurt attendance much. You've got some very ardent soccer fans supporting them, and this will probably be your last opportunity to see Indiana at Bill Armstrong Stadium this season, win or lose. Even if they win, they are probably heading off to play on the road because they did not receive a national seed. Poor start to the season. I think they started 3-4-4. Unbelievably, finished 12 with 12 wins and those same 4 losses. So a great recovery, unbelievable turnaround by that program. Congratulations to Coach Todd Yeagley. Continues to put out a program of excellence. I mean, Indiana soccer is the epitome of the word culture. Period. End of story. And they do the things that you have to do to put yourself in a position to win. And you want to talk about going hard? I think maybe they should send the basketball team over to the soccer field and just have them run through some drills at the speed that they go. And I think that would open their eyes a little bit. But congratulations to Coach Todd Yeagley and that entire program as they head into the NCAA tournament for an NCAA record-extending 37th consecutive season. I think that is the 48th NCAA appearance out of 51 seasons for Indiana. That's an astonishing number. But Indiana football, I tried not to talk about it much, or as a matter of fact, I haven't mentioned it today at all. Tom Allen, what is his situation going to be? Will that conversation will percolate as we get closer to the season, and it will kind of ride on what happens in these next 2 games. Indiana absolutely
go ahead. Finish what you were going to say. I didn't know you were going to.
I'm just going to say they absolutely have to win at home against Michigan State, and I think they have to beat Purdue at Purdue for Tom Allen to have any chance of returning. But we'll see. Go ahead.
I agree with you, and I know. I think I mentioned it yesterday. I think if you lose either one of them, Tom Allen's time at Bloomington will be over. And if you win both of them, it definitely increases the chances. And I think, and I'm not saying I expect this to happen, but if they win both of them dominantly, you are playing 2 of the worst teams on your schedule in the final 2 weeks of the season, Michigan State and Purdue. And they can very well beat you as well, obviously. But if you can dominate both of them, I think that would definitely be enough to at least secure one more season for Tom Allen. But if you lose either one of them, I think it's over. That's the spectrum we're on right now with the Tom Allen situation.
Yeah, I don't know what it would really take. I don't believe that a definitive decision has been made, but I think that the scenarios are laid out. If this happens, we have to be prepared to go in this direction. I think that they know that. And if they said, if this happens, well, we may have to discuss it at least. But it just kind of goes right in line with I didn't get to talk about the story, but $190-something million being paid out over the last few years just on freaking coaches' buyouts. It's unbelievably staggering. And it makes me sick, to be honest with you. Sick because none of it came to me, John. None of it.
Isn't that a
I mean,
disappointment?
dude, I will. You can buy me out for half of what you, so much less. But hey, not yet. Cannot thank you guys enough, as always, for being with us here at Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're back tomorrow to do it again. Don't forget to stay tuned if you're in Fort Wayne for the Sports Rush coming up next. And Caleb and Kenny are giving away 4 batches of 4 tickets.
That's
this
right,
week?
to Indiana, Michigan State this weekend.
Yeah, there you go. So you guys go out and have a great day. Thank you so much to our guest, Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Chronic Hoosier, and John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. Most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we have no reason to be here. Until tomorrow, I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.